This is week 4 of TouchDesigner Weekly, and this week we had 3 goals to cover: the TouchDesigner Intermediate course, 1 tutorial replication, and 1 pop-specific tutorial replication. It was a tight week with work, so we did what we could. So that TouchDesigner course, as you can see, was from Derivative here, and it's a bit shorter than the Fundamentals course, but it's a lot more dense. For this particular week, I did not get through the whole thing. I got through the first 2. I still have the third section of that course to go. Then we had a tutorial replication, which was using tops, and a pops one, which we completed. Okay, so this is the file that I built when following the intermediate course. As you can see, I've made one basically for every single module in the course because it is quite dense and there is a lot to cover. A lot of it isn't terribly interesting, but you'll see as we go along. I'll just try and speed through the boring parts here. In the first one, we looked at a lot of operator family conversions. So when we convert things from DATs to chops, when we convert tops to chops, DATs to sops, you can go on. It's basically all these conversions between operator families. And then we move into a couple of instancing examples, a little bit more complicated than the fundamentals course. We start off here. We have a table DAT moving into a chop there, and it's basically just change it into a constant using the name apple and I guess the parameter of 10. Then we have a circle. We can pull the points of that circle out using a DAT table. More than just the points, it's actually a number of different lines of information we can pull out from that circle. This one is pulling the points out into a chop there, and we can see the graph of those points. Here we have an example of pulling out the points of a pattern there, where we have 10 points on that, and we can use a chop2 operator to chop that line to whatever the pattern was on the chop operator, in this case a sine wave. Next we have converting a 3-channeled noise into 3D SOP using a limit. Here we have a constant using the RGB values to convert a simple color changing top. Next up, we have an example of how we can use a movie file, a trace operator, which is converting a top to a SOP. Then we can convert it to a geometry, use that original top as a texture for the Fong, which we can then put it back on the final geometry file there. Here we have more examples of using a chop to influence the colors of a top. Here we can have the points on a sine wave influencing the pixel values of a chop. Another constant into RGB values are the same as before, just the opposite way around. Here we have a ramp, which we have extrapolated into chop value, pulling out the RGB and alpha. And then we have it again, but this is the more complicated looking ramp, and each channel represents the RGB and alpha there. Using a table, converting that to a chop, so we can essentially graph what's in that table. And then just underneath, we have a way of transposing it and graphing and getting the same result. Finally, at the bottom here, we have an example of mapping the points of a circle once again. Here we have more examples of just pulling out the table for point values of a graph, an example of using a table to change the values of the points of a shape. Here we have a pattern where we've used that abs time to automate the phase using a math to smooth that out, to taper it down. And then we've chopped it to an SOP shape, basically a line, and then we've converted that into geometry and added a line texture onto that to get that cool looking wavy effect in 3D space. Here we have instancing. We are using constants, manually changing all those values, and then using the instance tab in the geometry to create and edit those boxes from their position to their rotation to their scale, and even their color there, all using the values we've pulled from these constants. Now we move on to instancing via the point cloud file. So this file basically contains a whole lot of information, and we can use that information to instance. In that first example, we are instancing that circle according to the translation from that null 3, just translating it according to the RGB values, and that's instancing that circle around the circle. And then we wanted to rotate vectors of those circles that we've instanced, and so we can use the point cloud once again to do that. Not gonna lie, I didn't fully understand how this point cloud file worked, but this was a initial introduction to it. Here we had another example of using a point file in and creating a banana point cloud out of that. So we had the point file in, send it to a null, and we get that sort of point file of a banana. And then we can select an RGB value out of that using a point file select and then a math to pull out a range. And then we can then re-add that color back into the geometry and use line texture as well. Pretty cool. Here we had a more complicated example of using noise and trails to draw sort of like a scribble in 3D space. The more complicated part of this example was actually influencing the rotational values of that object which we are instancing on a trail. So being able to figure out those rotational values where we somehow, through a process I don't fully understand yet, it is able to create a vector so that this object, which we are instancing according to the XYZ of the noise, is also being rotated according to the direction in which it is moving. Another example of instancing, this time we're using a DAT table to instance those cubes, the translation, rotation, scale once again, and even the color. We move into noise, a couple of editing the noise settings like the period and the amplitude, the monochrome. Here we're using ramps. The resolutions are really low, and that's why when we are reordering and switching them, as you'll see in a second here when I change the index of the switch, it's switching that noise to pull from the different inputs there. An example of using noise and creating a mask using a circle, and to get that wavy edge effect there, taking that noise, masking it using a circle. This is what it would look like normally. We add a channel mask just for the red there and change the UV weight, and it gives us this sort of pseudo chromatic aberration effect. Next we have channel shifting RGB effects. Here we can take a movie file, use a cache operator from that movie file, and if I pause here, you'll see that the cache, what it's doing is it's taking from 10 frames behind each time. So that index is the amount of frames you want to go back or forward. And then we can add a channel mix, change the RGB values. Once we compose those back together, we get this channel mixing effect using an add operation there. I did the same with a different movie file in, just to see what it would look like. And it actually looks really cool. This has a lot of interesting use cases. Nice simple effect, and you can actually just do it with a reorder. But this was an example of using the texture 3D top. So we pulled out from a folder to get a bunch of JPEG images, fed them through a movie file. We use the texture 3D to essentially cache all those frames there, and then we can feed it on into a material there. First of all, we need to instance before we can put that material on. Here we've got a rectangle and a grid there, which we've also turned it to a chop to be able to translate this geometry according to the data we had pulled out from that chop there. And what that does is it basically is instancing our texture 3D grid of images there, and that's the end result. Here we have a little web browser. I didn't even know this was a thing. Well, the main point of this was actually using the texture 3D with a larger cache size. You can see there it's caching 200 frames, and we can actually use a ramp and a time machine operator to create this slit scan effect. Now this is the colorful one. So this one here is where we use Open Color IO, and this is essentially showing us how we can use color correction, changing the color space, using LUTs, things like that. Using the Open Color IO, in this first example, we have just used that file transform tab and really just used a LUT from the samples folder. You can see how that LUT has made that first image look a bit nicer. In the second one, we've used the CDL transform tab and changed some of those variables and then added a LUT on top of that after, giving us this like cyberpunk sort of aesthetic. And this final one, we're actually just changing that output to match certain types of displays. So if you had a P3 DCI display, mainly for like live examples there. This final example, we actually built a bit more of an interesting scene. This was to show off multi-pass rendering and how we can apply different lighting to two objects within the same scene. So here we have a ring and a planet in the center. And if we wanted to apply two different types of lighting to those separate geometries, this is how you would do it to basically adjust lighting only on the ring. Oh, and we wanted to add a feedback there and a level change to that ring. And then we wanted to add a bloom just to that sphere portion. So here you can see that's the feedback, that's the level, and that noise just gives us the background, the stars there. And yeah, essentially this is an example of using multi-pass rendering to add different lighting or different effects like feedback or level to different pieces of geometry within the same scene. And that's as far as we got in the intermediate course. The last bit is for week 5 now. All right, so this is the first tutorial, as you can see here, and it's a top-based tutorial. So we're just using the tops operators, and we're creating this really, really cool generative pixel block pattern. So we start with a noise. We have animated TX and TZ using that abs time standard Python coding. And we've also changed, I think, the period and the exponent mainly for this one here. Then we go through a sequence of edge operators where we set the alpha to 1 and we just stack them on top of each other. We do it 5 times until it just becomes more visible there. I guess that's how it works if you set it to alpha. Then we have our feedback loop here. And what we're doing is we're chucking a level top to add a little bit of brightness variation in that composite. And yeah, we set the brightness to 0.9. And then we have a keyboard in. This is mapped to the feedback pulse, and it's just a quality of life thing for this particular project, not fully necessary. Once we get the comp, we have a limit operator. This is what gives us that really crazy pixelated sort of movement. Then we chuck it through a displace, and I mean, it looks really messed up there. So we take the edge out again, out of that displace, and we chuck that edge through another feedback loop. And in this feedback loop, we are using a transform and a level. So in that transform, we're just changing scale. You can see here, if you add a bit of rotation, you do get some bit of wackiness there. But just for this one, I'll set that back to normal just to show you what the end result should look like. We have a level, we've changed the brightness a little bit, and when we put those through a composite, this is what we get. RGB key to get rid of that alpha background, and just the final levels if we wanted to adjust a bit of brightness there. And that's the final product. It's actually a really, really simple tutorial. I think there's so much potential here to make something wackier and trippier. And so my goal for week 5 is to customize it a little bit and make something a little bit more original, but of course still based on this tutorial. Okay, so this is the Pops tutorial that I decided to cover for week 4. As you can see, it makes this really cool mandala trippy effect. I chose it because it was quick and moderately simple and used pops. So yeah, let's get into it. We start off with a line pop, add a bit of noise to that line pop, and then we use this revolve operator to sort of make a 3D radial interpretation of that line. We add a ramp texture using a lookup pop, and we use the output attribute scope as color. Then we use a copy to essentially instance that 24 times around the center there. And then the next step, we use this convert operator, which I don't fully understand exactly how it works, but you will see that it's essentially like the output is that it changes the texture of the shape. And so you can see one texture is a little bit more lines. I'll try and compare them here. Yeah, it's really hard to explain that difference there, but it's basically influencing the texture of that shape there. Taking those two variations there, and we are chucking them through a render network. Now the tutorial actually ends there. The tutorial doesn't show you how it's all rendered. So I sort of had to improvise a little bit and use my understanding of how materials worked and how lighting worked to try and replicate the end product. I had a camera, I chucked it into a null, And then I use an environment light, and I just use a random image movie file here from the stock folder. And I use the PBR material, and as you can see, that's the result that I got there. Chuck it through a lookup with a ramp to get that black background, and then a bloom to give it a bit of that nice glowing sort of effect. But you will note it does not look as good as the tutorial. Because I didn't fully understand it, I think next week I will try and spend more time to maybe modify this and actually get it closer to that tutorial. But yeah, in this instance, I don't really have, I guess, enough time to really mess around with it and get that desired final product. Also, plenty of ideas here with changing how the instancing works and maybe trying to make a different pattern or something like that. So we'll see for week 5 how that turns out. But yeah, that was the pop tutorial covered. All right, so for week 5, I think it's time that we create our own original piece based off of everything that I've covered so far. It's probably going to be a little bit rough, but you've got to start somewhere. Secondly, I think I'd want to create a modification to that trippy white pixelated one. I think there's a lot of opportunity to apply some of the other things I've learned, such as audio reactivity or maybe a bit of color to it. So I'm going to try and modify that one to create something a little bit different, a little bit more exciting. And then I also wanted to do the same for that pops one and see where it takes us. And then finally, I think we'll just add a new tutorial on top of all of that, and that should set us up for week 5. That's been 1 month of TouchDesigner, and this is how far we've come. So yeah, stay dedicated, stay consistent. See you next week